link here is taking a while to go live. There it goes. What's up, everybody? Good morning on this Tuesday, June 30th. Thank you all for being here as people begin to slowly trickle in. Hello, hello. Good morning, Jen. Hopefully you're all having a fantastic start to your morning. I know I absolutely am. Very hectic start today. I gotta say, as we work through what this new workflow is going to look like. And I gotta turn this off. I gotta mute the TV. There we go. It's a very interesting change to the routine here as far as getting the show ready and things like that. I take a lot of phone calls now in the morning. Actually got a very pleasant phone call from an old colleague of mine back in Pittsburgh, and we talked for about 25 minutes. And got off the phone with Kirk Bankstead of Minocqua Brewing. He helped me make sure that we're all rolling. And so this is the first official day where the people of the Minocqua Brewing Substack also have the capacity to check the program out here. So we're very happy to welcome all of you guys here too. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Ben Cominos, formerly of Outside the Box, currently of Outside the Box, just not on the radio anymore. I see Farrags, you saying I need a desk and boom mic. Don't you worry, that's all coming. I got to do this one day at a time. It's quite the process here. But I'm Ben Cominos. I was let go from the radio station for reasons that will never be entirely clear to me. But what are you going to do? You can't really change people's minds on these kind of things. You can only move forward. We are currently streaming live on the Minocqua Brewing Time Substack. I also have my Ben Cominos YouTube page as well, and plenty of other ways to stay in touch as I am becoming a content machine here for everybody. So I'm very excited to welcome the new audience into the program today. We haven't missed a step. Quite frankly, it's only becoming more aggressive the further along we go. We had a couple of guests last week. All of my episodes are archived on my Ben Cominos YouTube page if you find yourself not being able to listen live at any moment. And I really am appreciative of Minocqua Brewing for bringing me on board here as we continue diving into the world of politics. I mean, if there were ever a time to not eliminate a political talk show, you'd figure it'd be 6 weeks before the gubernatorial primary, 3 months before the general election, and yet here we are. What's up, Ben? What's up, Jarmani, Ali, Ben Cominos fan club? So many people popping in here as we get rolling. I do appreciate you guys as you all trickle in here. It's always overwhelming to see how many people are still ready to rock and roll with the program here, and we've got a lot to jump into. What's up, old lib? We've got a lot to jump into here today if you haven't seen my tease and my rundown for what is coming up on the program. So let's get right into it, shall we? We're not going to do like yesterday where it's a 20-minute ramp up into the content of the show. There's quite a lot that I would like to jump into. As we speak right now, I don't have confirmation on the decision, but just an FYI, it looks as though SCOTUS is releasing a decision on the transgender athlete ban as more information is made available about that as I'm talking to you guys. I'll be sure to talk to you about that. And that is, ironically enough, where I wanted to start this program today. What sticks out to me, and the show's called Outside the Box, right? If you come here and you're not open to a different way of thinking, to a different way of approaching life, to a different way of doing politics, this show might rub people the wrong way. There's one thing that I do not accept as an answer in politics, and that is thank you for the compliments on the towel on the couch. For those of you on TikTok, just because you don't have a good screen there, that's what we're dealing with there. But you know. That's what I got. And we got me and my new friend over here hanging out in the shadows, as Herb likes to highlight. So we're slowly working on decorations. This will actually look like a studio. And I can't, again, I realize this is going to be like a month and a half long tease, but really good things are coming as long as you guys can stick with me through the Bush League doing it in my living room phase. We're going to have a pretty fancy studio here in the very near future. And if you look at my Facebook feed, you might be getting some hints as to what's coming. But that's all I can do for you guys as of right now. So, um, I wanted to start off talking about SCOTUS, and they did uphold the transgender athlete ban. Now, allow me to say this, and like I realize this is probably one of my less left-leaning opinions. I struggle with the concept of yes, this is a custom bobblehead in the background. That's a me. I got it for being the best man at one of my good friends' weddings, and then this is a Bernie Sanders in the mittens situation there. He and I are buds. I'm sure that should come as a shock to nobody that he and I are good buds. That's why I set us up here. Well, now he's just going to have to lay down because it's going to take me far too long to set it up again. So whoever asked, thanks for just ruining the entire flow. I'm joking. Um, Jake Brambo, thanks for being here. So I'll be real with you. If I had a daughter, if I had a child playing sports, specifically contact sports, if we're talking about one or the other, I'm a volleyball guy. It's not like I'm knocking. Yeah, it's all good, Jim. I'm screwing with you. I'm not knocking anybody who doesn't play contact sports. I was not built for contact. Um, but I can understand why there are parents out there that have an issue with this. Here's the thing. We should not accept that the Supreme Court doesn't do anything for months at a time and then is like, here's 15 cases all in the last week before we get to take our 6-week vacation. And you guys only get 2 weeks if you're lucky from your job. We should not accept that. As Morgan says, they don't do much in general. Exactly. We should not be accepting that as the way that they operate. And this isn't because they're a Republican majority. This is the way they always operate. And that's the kind of thing that this show likes to highlight. The fact that that's the way it was always done does not mean that we have to accept the way that that is. You know what no one's going to talk about? This transgender athlete ban is going to get a lot of notification. There's transgender people in my life, or notoriety rather. There's transgender people in my life. I want them to feel accepted and welcomed in all communities. But I also know that there are certain instances where that's not going to be the case. And we got to find a way as a society to get through that. And it deserves its attention. But what gets ignored in this conversation is that every time the conversation is about billionaires, is about Monsanto and the fact that they can no longer be sued for using a carcinogenic element in their weed killer. When the conversation surrounds billionaires, this Supreme Court falls in love. They love doing whatever they can to make the laws more affordable for billionaires, however that looks. And then they give you the scraps that are social issues or election issues that are all out there. I appreciate you, Morgan. I like you too. um I'm right there with you. And so, what did you say, you're Violet? I scolded my neighbor for using Roundup the other day. LOL. Exactly, because even if you get sick now, it's not like you can sue. So, like, let's look at how the mainstream media talks about this, shall we? They're going to talk to you about the fact that mail-in ballots are still going to be counted. I mean, that's good. That's objectively a good thing. That's the way that life should work. You should have access to voting. We shouldn't be holding our breath as to whether or not the Supreme Court is going to be able to do the right thing surrounding mail-in voting. That shouldn't be an issue, but it stayed. And as I've often stated, with no legal degree, with no background in justice or being a judge or a lawyer in any way, I am able to predict what's going to happen in the Supreme Court with roughly 70 to 80% accuracy. So had you asked me before the vote, are they going to cancel mail-in voting? I'd be like, yeah, probably. They're just going to do whatever Trump does. I would have been wrong that time. That would have been 2 of the 10 times that I was wrong. 8 out of 10 times I would be right. If I have the ability to determine how a Supreme Court is going to rule on a case, knowing nothing other than the political ideology of the judges and justices making the decision, then how real are our laws at that point, right? If I can say, oh, it's a 5-4 liberal court, I bet you gay marriage stays legal. Oh, it's a 6-3 Republican court, I bet you anything dealing with trans people goes against the trans people. No matter what, that it shouldn't work that way. And then those are held up as the main cases that we should talk about. The transgender athlete ban, the mail-in voting case, those are going to get more attention than the Monsanto one. They're going to distract you from the obvious billionaire case with the social issues that matter. I don't want to sound insensitive, but it matters to 0.8% of the population. Or is it 1.8? I'd have to look my stats back up. Not saying they don't matter, but now we are going to see for the next 24 hours a case surrounding 1.8% of the population getting screwed out of how they can play sports. Meanwhile, we are going to be breathing in carcinogens because our right-wing Supreme Court doesn't have the guts to push back against the billionaires that in all likelihood bought their seats. Brambo says, obviously, Ben, the gifts, trips, lunches don't cause any kind of bias or conflict of interest for them all the way back and beyond Citizens United. And that's when it all started. It was a right-wing Supreme Court that pushed Citizens United across the finish line. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I would expect anything different out of a centrist Supreme Court, but the fact is, the actual metrics show that when Republicans have control of the Supreme Court, which is most of American history, mind you, that's when the pro-billionaire shit happens. And until you're able to look past the noise and see what's actually happening, we're not going to be able to coalesce around anything. And that, to me, is why they wait until the end of their term to just dump like 15 cases at your feet to be like, sift through it and hopefully you're able to make it make sense. There was a video on one of my social feeds of a guy who had a lot of, and for those of you listening on Substack, sometimes I have to talk like an idiot because TikTok is very censorous. It censors me for saying things. So when I say Yahtzee, please understand that I'm actually saying a word that rhymes with Yahtzee. I came across a Yahtzee account with a guy walking around Walmart complaining that Muslim music was playing around the Walmart and looking to see who he could complain to, eventually going to, you know, guy sitting in his car with his sunglasses on telling you to become Karens and complain to whoever you can until that music goes away. In a world where 30% of our population just cannot stop thinking about what people's genitalia looks like, the billionaire Supreme Court cases are going to go under the radar and we're not going to notice that any, well, we'll notice, but you're not going to be able to generate any kind of momentum surrounding that. Brambo's saying he wishes content creators would just not use TikTok. I'll tell you, man, there's a monetization opportunity on there outside of that. And let's just say when you get fired without cause from your job and you need to find a way to replicate your money, you go on TikTok, even though they pretty clearly are a trash ass app. But trust me, that's why. For those of you not looking at my YouTube or Facebook, I have a link tree in there and it's connected to my Venmo and Patreon. So anybody who has a capacity to throw me a couple bucks, I definitely appreciate that as I try and build up kind of a more independent approach to media relative to the way that I have been doing things. But when you drop all of these cases at once, because Mr. 1488, which you can look up what that means on your own time, because Mr. Yahtzee is mad that they're playing Muslim music at a Walmart, something tells me that same guy is going to go on his social feed, start creating videos about how excited he is about the transgender sports ban and completely ignoring the overt gifts to the billionaire class that MAGA seems to be pushing back against. Oh, yeah, we're trying to crack down on that there deep state. Oh, really? Because it looks like the deep state's running ruckshot on you and is just pulling the wool over your eyes and giving you crumbs in the form of a transgender sports ban. Like, this is not a win. And some of you, and again, I have my consternation surrounding transgender women playing in women's sports. I do get it. If I had a daughter playing lacrosse and I saw somebody who was born in one body who identified a different way running at them from the other side, I might have some issues with it, right? Not stemming from hate, not stemming from bigotry, stemming from, I want my kid to be okay on the other side of this. And I think that's a real issue that people can have. But the idea that people are basing their entire political identity around that population of people, in my humble opinion, is a very embarrassing way to do politics. Excuse me for 1 second. I just want to make sure that I have the Minocqua chat up here as well, because I want to be able to involve them in the show here as well. For some reason, it seems as though I can't. It looks like it's just a black screen. I hope it's streaming the right way for Kirk. I'm sure he would have texted me if it weren't up by now, but worst case scenario, we can figure this out another time. But it doesn't seem like I can see the chat, at least on my iPad. I'll have it up on my Mac computer for tomorrow. I'm still very much flying by the seat of my pants. I don't want to miss a show. I'm not going to fall out of my routine. So I just keep doing shows, even though we don't necessarily have all of the pieces in place just yet. So I appreciate everybody's patience as we kind of get this show up and running here. Political, I got laid off. Welcome to the party. Thanks for being here. Your support is always appreciated. What are we saying here? Beeman, the way you frame the analogy tells me that you are pretty hateful. No, Beeman, let me use an example here. I played volleyball in high school. And hold on 1 second, Jim. I'm happy to bring you on if you're trying to take part in here. I played men's volleyball in high school. We were a bad team. We probably didn't win 4 matches a year playing. I don't think I won 20 matches over the course of 4 years. Oh, here, let me get you the link. Hold on 1 second, YouTube. Stand by. I'm just gonna bang. There you go. All right. I played volleyball for 4 years. Beeman, I hope you're listening. Stop talking to Allie. Played volleyball for 4 years. Didn't win 20 matches in 4 years. We were bad. My sophomore year, in an effort to embarrass us, our coach decided that they wanted to have us play the JO women's team, the Junior Olympic women's team. It was the best women in volleyball across all of Pennsylvania. I see you, Alex. I'll get you on shortly. It was all of the best women across all of Pennsylvania. They put us against them for a game. Now, here's the thing that those of you that have never played volleyball might not know. A men's net is 8 foot 3 inches tall. A woman's net is 7 foot 6 inches tall. I'm 6 foot 4. And while I was the tallest guy on my high school team, when we played actually good teams, I would have been in the back row probably, because everybody was taller than me. We played the women, and you had one of two options. You were either going to play on a guy's net, which the women were not used to hitting on, and so their speed, their velocity was tremendously reduced because they were not used to hitting a ball over a net that size. Or we play on the girls' net, and now I don't even have to jump anymore and able to put the ball through the floor. And for the record, I have never been uncomfortable. You guys know who I am as a person at this point. If you're a regular, Beeman seems a little confused, but if you know who I am, you know, very pro-feminist. Girls can do anything boys can do. Nothing I'm talking about there. The principle of the matter is we mopped the floor with them for 3 games straight, and we were trash because the net was so short. So if I'm not saying that transgender people choose to identify that way in the name of being able to play in the opposite sport to be able to dominate. I am saying that if I identified as transgender when I were 15 years old and were playing on a girl's net, I can understand why there would be people watching that being like, okay, can we acknowledge that there are biological differences between people that are born as men and women? And for the record, there are women that would beat my ass at volleyball. I'm not a fool. I understand that they are out there, but it's not the norm. So I can understand why there would be people who aren't bigoted, who aren't hateful, that look at life through a different lens. Biff says, so now you change the net height to something more in between. That's a conversation that can be had. I'm here for that conversation. But that is, I can get it. But if my daughter were playing against someone my build who identified as trans, who was on the other team, and they got the floor mopped with them, and they looked at me, I would say, sometimes life isn't fair. Sometimes you have the #1 rated talk show in your time slot, and you lose the job for no reason other than people just didn't want you there. And you need to be able to grow up and get past that, because this isn't going to be the last time that you experience something like that. That's the way that I would talk to my daughter about this. I don't think that I'm mad that I am 20 minutes into this conversation and I'm still talking about this. We should be more mad about the Monsanto thing. This is my point. Is I brought up Monsanto, and then I said the transgender thing, and then I make one comment, and now the conversation has become about transgender athletes playing sports. This is what the system wants. This is how the system operates. And this is why we seem to chase our tails surrounding bringing oligarchs and billionaires to heel, because inevitably, especially within the MAGA right, you say the word transgender, and all of a sudden the Manchurian candidate attitude kicks in. Violet says people like Beeman are everywhere, primed to distract. I think you're probably right, and unfortunately, I just don't have the capacity to ignore it. Alex, I'm bringing you up. Stand by for impact. Here we go. Bang. How are you?
Righty.
And just an FYI, I'm swearing less on this show now, so try and keep it. I know. I'm right there with you.
I know. Coffee was probably a little bit different than me being nervous during calling in, but
Yeah.
I do have to unfortunately push back on your opinion.
Please do.
So I actually just learned yesterday for the first time about a Olympic athlete, and let me see if I can find her full name here. Give me 1 second. I was in the middle of the article. Annette Ngisa. She was a runner, and I forget what year, but she underwent a surgery because they had discovered that she was intersex. She had internal testes, which, according to the regular plan, all that they were going to do was put her on some sort of hormone replacement therapy and leave her internal organs, her own internal organs. But during the surgery, when she was under anesthetic and could not consent, they removed those gonads, in something called a gonadectomy. So as someone who was incredibly involved in sports, I still am to this day as a fan. A shit player is a shit player, no matter how you slice it. Someone who can use their physical strength or prowess against another player instead of having discipline and ethics to play a game correctly, they're going to do that because at the end of the day, they were raised under a misguided moral compass. Like, you have to have integrity for your other teammates as you would the game. Otherwise, you are doing a disservice to the game. Ask the fucking Yankees if they know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, you don't see anyone talking about William Contreras being a horrible representation of the sport of baseball, but his brother Wilson, it seems like every other week I'm seeing he's getting just dogpiled for something that he did during a game, whether he deserved it or not. But in those two players, in the two brothers, you can see that there is two sides of the coin. One's a good player and has the utmost respect for everyone on the field. Like that series that we played, I think 3 teams ago. Now, who was it? Someone got hit by a pitch from Miz at like over 100 miles an hour, and it hit him right here on the cheek guard. And the first thing that Wilson did is he threw his mask off and he grabbed him because he bent over and like Will thought he was going to collapse to the ground. So he grabbed him. He made sure he was okay. That's a genuine human being, just point blank, period.
Yeah.
And the kind of rhetoric that comes along with, well, this person was born a boy, but now they identify as a girl. So you're just going to have to understand that, like, they have an advantage over you. I would beg to differ. Based on all of the psychology research that has been done, I think that there is a physical disadvantage that comes to being a trans athlete. You already are under so much pressure and scrutiny. You are going to perform differently, and you're probably going to look at the frail, small, fragile people on the field and go, they're completely off limits. Or I become an international sensation and my family gets doxxed and I get death threats and I'm only 14 years old.
And if I may, Alex, I mean, I was put on this earth to think and talk, not play sports. I'm pretty sure even in my prime, I don't think I was running a sub 540. So like, it's not like inherently just because you're a boy or a man and you transition, you're all of a sudden going to be, there are definitely people faster than me. You know what I mean? And to your point, it's
Right,
just
absolutely.
the experience. All I have is my own lived experience in that. And like, when I'm standing at a net and I'm all of a sudden at here before I jump compared to here before I jump, it's it's a different biological thing. And again, I don't want to make this a 2-hour conversation about transgender athletes, but
right.
yes, but so I just say I totally get what you're saying, and I am there. I'm just saying that until and you and I both know MAGA's not checking the science out. They're not thinking about it from the perspective. This is coming strictly from I don't want any parts of this. And so it's not like I can even say something sweeping like, well, until there's more research, because no amount of scientific evidence is ever going to convince bigotry to stop.
Right.
But at the same time, to me, I'm doing this segment more from a now that the Supreme Court has ruled this, and until we can find a workaround, it seems as though it's off the table. It's time to stop talking about it and kind of move to the stuff that is impacting us in a way like, okay, MAGA, you won. It's not happening anymore. Now, can we tax a freaking billionaire? Like, can we have a talk about something else?
Capable of walking and chewing gum at the same time, though. I think as a species, we have evolved a little bit to be able to divert resources to where it is necessary. So, like, as someone whose closest friend group, not a lot of straight people in there, not you know, I think that it's really important that we are checking the people around us for the things that they do and say and the rhetoric that they do espouse, because like whether or not you realize it, like acting as if intersex people don't exist somehow, or as if you know someone could go 30 years in their life without ever having the testing done to see if they do potentially have a different set of chromosomes than they initially thought they had, or potentially internal organs that they were unaware of. You know, if we're going to look at especially athletes that have undergone hormone replacement therapy, which does change how your bone density is, like things that are so technologically advanced that you do have to sit down and read PubMed studies about it. Sure. It is boring and it is hard to do if you're not familiar with the vernacular or unable to look it up. Like, I do understand that, but at the end of the day, for me, trans athletes, you just need to teach your kids how to be a loser. Like, learn to accept the L. Agree. You have to be a good loser about stuff, because if you sit there and you say, well, that person just beat you because they were born a boy, honey, or some generic shit like that, you know, you're giving your kid a big pass at just being a huge dweeb. And that's not setting anybody up for success.
I could have sulked the whole last week in a different world, you know? Instead, you get up and you do your show from your living room. That's the idea. You get beat, you go learn how to jump higher next time then. I appreciate we got people lining up, so I'm going to boot you. Always a pleasure. We'll talk soon.
Always a pleasure.
And yeah, Serial Killer Clown, and I know who you are now. I saw your message. I'll keep it to myself. I see we have Allie on the TikTok stream here. I'm going to turn the volume up a little bit here if you had something you wanted to say. But Serial Killer Clown says, we're not going to get distracted by something that affects almost no one. Here we are still talking about it. Exactly. This This is how MAGA politics wins. Supreme Court overturns campaign finance limits. So now billionaires can throw even more money into it. That's the conversation here. But I'm happy to keep this rolling as long as listeners want to. What's up, Allie?
Yeah, I did want to sort of talk about the same subject.
Please.
One, I wanted to know what your opinion and sort of everyone's opinion with the Supreme Court ruling, because it is specifically gendered for trans women.
Sure.
It doesn't have anything about, female to male transition or anything like that. I was just wondering what your opinion was on that. I guess I'll start with that.
Right, exactly. And it's a double standard that unfortunately exists, but you're exactly right. Because nobody assumes an innate advantage from somebody born a woman who identifies as a man and transitions, whereas the advantages seem going in the other way, because statistically speaking, probably not 1% of women are taller than me, whereas in the world of men, as I mentioned, even in high school, on my high school, yeah, I was the tallest guy. But then there'd be times when I'm looking at three guys that are all 6'4" plus, and I'm like, it's going to be one of those kind of matches today, isn't it? And that's just it's more likely transitioning the other way. So yes, there are, I think, in the eyes of a lot of people, no inherent advantages going the other way.
And then, so like I did sports from like elementary school up until college. Like I did college track and field. And like from my perspective, I think the argument behind the whole thing, like people will argue the physical advantage and disadvantage. But actually, I think from the NCAA perspective and like just how much money, like going to Penn State, it really showed me how much money sporting events can get people. And the biggest argument is how much money it would take for the NCAA to allow for everyone and to be inclusive and allow for trans athletes to play, because they would have to implement tests to test for different level, all those sorts of things in order to abide by whatever section of whatever contract in whatever school. It's like the false facade of like, oh, there's a physical advantage, even though we can scientifically prove that there isn't, is just a guise of the bigger issue, in my opinion. It's going to cost money. Being progressive, being woke is expensive. Being inclusive rather than exclusive is expensive. And I think that's the biggest thing, because I know like if Penn State had a trans football player, people would stop coming, and they want to avoid that. It seems like we use a facade argument to keep the ball rolling and never talking about the actual issues, in my opinion. As someone who's like in like college athletics, up until I came to Penn State, I decided to quit track. That's not really ever what's talked about. You don't talk about the other team and who they have. It's more so like, oh shit, Penn State Harrisburg has way better resources than we do, and that's the end of the story.
Absolutely. And I just got off the phone with a guy in his 60s who does radio in Western PA, who got laid off from the station where I was producing at and got a job at a smaller market. Now he's producing at a TV station, and he says to me verbatim, and it kind of echoes what you just stated. You said being woke is expensive. He stated having empathy is expensive, because when I think there's a lot of truth to that, and it's an unfortunate reality. And in a world, you and I think a lot of the people that interact with outside the box aren't necessarily super money motivated, but I'd also argue that we're probably not the norm in society, unfortunately. I'm not saying I don't want it to get to that point at some place. And you bring up a lot of interesting points and reflection. And again, I'm not even saying it'll be a cold day in hell if Francesca Hong came out and said, I want to do Medicare for all. I want to cut off the funding for our allies in the Middle East. I want to make sure that wealthy people pay their fair share in taxes. And I want to see that transgender athletes get to play for the sports that they identify as. That person is getting my vote 100 out of 100 times. You know what I mean? I don't want it to sound like for a single second that this ever even, I would never vote based on this issue. And we unfortunately live in a world where there are people that are willing to champion the Trumpian level of corruption that we have been dealing with for the last year and a half, all in the name of making sure that 9 trans athletes don't get to play in the sports they identify as. And while I think it's a waste of time and I think they're morons, you can't ignore the fact that that's a real thing that people are voting on these days.
The way that I sort of explain it to people who ask me, like, if there is a candidate that is, maybe not trans friendly, but does offer all those things, is that just the logical conclusion of who's it going to help the most. And, like, especially when it comes to healthcare, I would much rather my trans friends be able to get their, their hormones, their medications, and everything through trusted health providers than having to do back alley, pill shuffles
Sure.
trying to get what they need. And like the logic of it's going to impact more people this way, thus them under an umbrella, is sort of how like I've explained it to people, especially like my trans friends who are like, why would you sort of pick and choose? And it's not picking and choosing. Whenever I would much rather you have these resources than being able to play NCAA sports where there's maybe 9 of you.
Sure, I get it. I love where your head's at, and I'm here for compromise. I appreciate the message as always, Allie. You take it easy.
One other thing, whenever you have guests up on the TikTok, you should drop them, because if we drop ourselves, it can like throttle your ability in the For You page.
Cool, right on. I'm kicking you out right now. Get out of here. All right, Jim, what's on your mind?
Hey, Ben. Hey, I got some like similar insight to this. I actually am in the next state over. I'm in Ohio. I am a part of the OHSAA, the Ohio High School Athletic Association. We had a standing policy for trans athletes for quite a while, until the legislature here followed the Republican majority and moved to ban trans athletes from sports. Up until that time, there had been maybe a dozen students who wanted to play sports. And really, it was all just about them wanting a chance to play. It had nothing to do with an advantage. And none of them actually, of all the athletes who had done it, none of them had contributed to their team in a significant way that changed the outcome of who won any division of whatever sport they were playing.
Interesting.
As well. So I just actually got back from the national championships, and dude, I had 14 and 15-year-old girls who were 6'4", just like you. On the women's net, and by the way, the men's net is basically 8 foot. It's 7'11" and 5'8". But still, the idea of a 6'4" guy playing on a women's net, and actually at the Open Championships, which I worked, the USAV Open Championships in Orlando, they have a division called co-ed reverse fours, where they have 2 men and 2 women, adults, on the floor at the same time. There are specific rules to keep the men from dominating, but one of them is if a man attacks the ball over, that a man on the other side can block it. Well, their issue was there was a couple teams that were kind of playing more at a recreational level versus a more competitive level. We had guys in the VLA, the pro, semi-pro league that we have, and they were just destroying these poor guys on the other side who are like closer to my age, trying to hit the ball over. But the thing is, it's a big nothing burger. It's a distraction.
Agreed.
It's a distraction from exactly what you talked about. The things like Monsanto, the things about people doing this. It's something like Eddie Murphy said in Beverly Hills Cop. What is something over here that would make me forget about what's going on over here?
Exactly. Good reference. Good reference.
That's what it is. It's a big distraction. And I got back and I was speaking with my dad, who's a red hat wearing person like that, and he's like going, he's all in on this and like about trans athletes. I'm like, dude, trust me, I know. I work for the organization. I am on their staff, and I know how many people this affects. And all it is a bunch of kids that just want to play. It's just crazy. Now, are there some NCAA issues? Yeah, there's some levels of that. I work collegiate volleyball as well. I've only run into one trans athlete the entire time that I've been out there in my matches, and they weren't any better than anybody else on the floor. They were just wanting to be out there playing. So, but
Jim, I have to say, is this your first time finding outside the box? Is this your first time here?
Yeah, Yes, it is, sir.
I'm happy you found it. I think you're going to fit in great here. I appreciate the insight and a lot of the input you put there. Thank you very much for adding to the conversation and highlighting that there are bigger fish.
And I will hopefully be back again another time.
Good. You take it easy, man. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, let me kick you here. All right, bang. Great. All right, we got one more. By the way, I did want to hit Mallory here, and then we're going to bring Political on TikTok. She says Alona Mar and Katie Ledecky, both U.S. women Olympians, get crap from folks because they are perceived as not being feminine enough and get called men. Again, transphobia affects cis women. Absolutely. I just read Len Nelson, formerly of my former radio station, had a post that was out there on Facebook this morning talking about a local person who went through the same thing, just using a restroom. And of course, these MAGA people just cannot drop it. And again, I do have other segments. I'm going to let Political get his point out there, but I promise you, this is the whole point. We're almost 40 minutes into my show talking about this announcement that just came down the pipeline, and it's kind of hard to ignore the reality that this is happening at a time. My main segment of the day is that Republicans are trying to sneak the Save America Act into a reconciliation bill so they only need 50 votes to pass it and can circumvent the filibuster. That's all happening right now, while the bulk of the conversation is going to be about transgender athletes. So, like, keep that in mind. But I want to hear what Political has to say about it first. I'm unmuting you now. What's on your mind? Yeah. What's up, dude? How you doing?
Hey, sorry to hear about your radio station and getting furloughed.
We're bouncing back harder than ever. We'll be good.
Yeah, sorry that I'm just now finding out about it. I don't even know when it happened.
Last Monday. It's been 8 days. It's been a process, but we're good. We're good. I'm telling you right now, there's a lot of good things in the works that I can't tell you about right now that you'll see come to fruition over the next couple weeks.
Good. That's why I wanted to come in and just be like, hey, forget them. You know, you got a good voice, you have great ideas, man. Bigger, better things. You know.
Right on, dude. I appreciate that very much.
Yeah. Serious. You know, you can start your own radio station.
We'll see. We'll see where it goes from here.
A left-wing version of like a Glenn Beck or something. You know.
He should be so lucky to get that comparison. I appreciate that very much. Hey, I appreciate the support, dude, and we'll have to get you on a nighttime live again real soon. All right?
Yeah, for sure. I'll reach out a little later and send you my schedule for July.
Right on.
Get it going. But yeah, you can kick me, but that's all I wanted to say, man.
You're great. I appreciate you, dude. You take it easy. Thanks for being here. Yeah. So, I mean, good conversation, guys. Good, respectful conversation. The kind of conversation that you would think radio stations would want, but whatever. Oh, yeah. Okay. Thank you for handling that, Allie. Cassandra says the mysterious Tom Keene is said to be addressing the House soon. Yeah, that'll be interesting. Court rejects Trump's bid to end birthright citizenship. See, so this was the whole point of the conversation. Yvette, thanks for being here. Republicans are now going to be up in arms because much like how when Trump wins an election, it was a good election. When he doesn't, obviously something nefarious happened, according to him. It's the same idea surrounding the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court just rejected the bid to end birthright citizenship. It's going to allow for mail-in voting to still be allowed to count it. And he's going to say that those are fraudulent rulings. And of course, his supporters are going to echo that because what are they going to do? Think for themselves? Please. So they're going to echo his sentiments about those Supreme Court cases. We, as progressives, leftists, and I'm assuming not all of you are, so I shouldn't say we because this show goes everywhere, are going to get upset about the transgender athletes rules and the protections being removed by Haitians and all of those different elements. And fundamentally, the pro-billionaire, pro-oligarch conversations are going to get swept under the rug, and the mainstream media is going to be more than happy to run the birthright citizenship and transgender athlete bills up the flagpole because the Supreme Court does jack crap for months at a time, and then ultimately ends up cramming 12 bills into the end of their session, and then we're all sitting here just picking out one or two that we're going to focus on. And again, look at how much conversation and consternation. If I still were in the boomer sphere of AM talk radio, like thankfully this happened while I'm doing an online show, because I'd argue more people online are probably pro, whereas in the AM talk sphere, it's a little older. It's probably going to skew in a different direction. But it was a positive conversation here about a conversation that I think is very hard to talk about for a lot of people. And that's the kind of conversations that I like to have on this show. But all of that being said, this is how the duopoly wins. And I think we would serve ourselves better to focus on the things that impact us in the day to day and not allow ourselves to be distracted by the comings and goings of, of identity politics. And I don't say that in a way that implies that I don't think it matters. Killer Clown says, for the love of Xenu, trans people in amateur sports doesn't affect the economy or affordability. Eyes on the prize. Let's talk about what's important. I couldn't agree with you more. And as the Supreme Court votes to allow mail-in ballot voting to continue counting, which is a step in the right direction, I think most people listening can probably agree with. Mike Johnson and the Republicans in the House are currently doing a workaround here surrounding the Save America Act. So some of you may remember in the Biden years, the $15 minimum wage was proposed via reconciliation. For those of you that don't know, Reader's Digest version, reconciliation is essentially able to be voted on. It's all budgetary concerns. It surrounds budgets and numbers. And instead of requiring the Senate 60-seat majority, it only requires a simple majority, 50 plus the vice president. Now, obviously, every single Republican in the House and Senate, maybe minus one or two, but I even doubt that, is going to vote for the Save America Act. But during the Biden years, that's how they tried to get minimum wage across. As Ali messages and says, I love that I get paid $7.25 in PA so bad. Greatest country in the world. So you should be happy to take part in it there. Violet says that's the minimum wage in Georgia as well. Everybody who's listening, type what your minimum wage is in as people convince us that we haven't had to raise it. And not to make this a conversation about minimum wage, but also go back and look at the history of minimum wage. We haven't increased it since 2009. You go find me a second time where that's possible, or that happened, where it went 15 years. In the boomer era, find me 3 years in a row where that didn't happen. The Biden administration, when they had a trifecta, $16 in Jersey, $7.25 in Wisconsin. Keep it rolling here. When the Democrats had a trifecta, they went to pass that $15 minimum wage. And you may remember that's when the Senate parliamentarians showed up and said, hey, that doesn't count. You're not allowed to include minimum wage in a reconciliation bill. That's not how this stuff works. And the Democrats listened, because the Democrats are also pro-oligarch. They just do a better job of pretending they are not. The parliamentarian can sit there and whine and moan all they want. It has just as much authority as I do on Outside the Box. You can say, okay, good job. Now sit down and shut up while we do the thing. Jay says, my first job 20 years ago was min wage in Ohio for $7.10. My point exactly. The Democrats allowed the Senate parliamentarian to tell them to take the minimum wage increase out of the bill, and they listened. The Republicans are now going to try and do the exact same thing with the Save America Act. And I have the worst kind of feeling that it's going to work, and they're going to ignore the Senate parliamentarian. And Democrats will sit there and pearl clutch and be like, that's not what the norms dictate. That's not how you're supposed to react to the Senate parliamentarian. And the Republicans will give them the bird, and they're going to push it across the finish line. I hope that I am wrong. But this is the way that the two sides are playing the game. Yvette saying, Thune saying he doesn't like it. I've seen that before. I've seen Susan Collins tell us she has some big concerns about some of the strange things the Republican Party's doing, only to turn around and either vote for it or see it pass anyway, despite the fact of her concerns. The fact is, there's what, 53 Republicans in the Senate? You only need 50 because J.D. Vance is going to vote for it. So it's a little bit of cosplay right now. I hope I'm wrong, but I want to highlight that in an effort, and by the way, this is being reported by commondreams.org. It's a free progressive news site. I oftentimes source it for my shows. So those of you that don't check out Common Dreams, you should be checking them out. That's the kind of news you get from there when you oftentimes wonder, why is Ben talking about stuff that I haven't seen a single thing on TV or in the New York Times or Washington Post? It's because you got to go to the independent journalists, because of course the monetary journalism operations are all going to be focusing on how to protect Jeff Bezos's money, considering the fact that Jeff Bezos, what do you call it? Owns the Washington Post. Serial Killer Clown says, Ben, IDK who, besides opportunity workers, work for minimum wage in Wisconsin? My GF 16-year-old kid works for $19.50 in fast food. Oh, there's opportunities out there, and the systems sometimes require. It's like when I post a video about how we're the only nation on the planet that does not guarantee time off from our government. We are dependent on the kindness of our businesses in order to give us time off. Now, I don't know many people working a salaried position that don't have 2 weeks off. I know plenty of hourly employees that can take time off, but that means they don't get paid. I'm not going to ignore the fact that I oftentimes have jobs that have paid vacations, because there are other people that obviously don't. You're exactly right. A lot of people find their way out of minimum wage positions. What you ignore, Killer Clown, and I believe you're local. I don't want to misspeak, but I believe you're in the Fox Valley area. And I say this about Pittsburgh all the time. When the recession happened, everybody was complaining about jobs. Access to jobs, getting employed, finding gainful employment. In Pittsburgh, there were a lot of jobs. You know where there weren't jobs? The center part of PA. One of my good friends who worked at a copier sales job company that I had right out of college, he came from a rural part of Pennsylvania, and he was almost like the mayor of that town because his dad owned the lumber mill. And everybody who worked in the lumber mill, or everyone who lived in the town, worked in the lumber mill. And then one day the dad cashed out. Was it private equity? I have no idea. My mind wasn't wired that time. I don't know what it was. Did he retire? Did he get made the offer he couldn't refuse? I have no idea. But eventually sold out, and much like how you hear about in Nebraska with the meat packing facility closing down and eliminating 3,000 jobs, the same thing happened there. And in those towns, that's where you go and work for $7.25 an hour. And the most brain-punchingly frustrating part about all of that is that the people that live in that town turn around and vote for the state senators and state legislators and presidents and senators that are going to vote against raising the minimum wage, and then sit there bitching that they can't figure out a way to get out of the circular drain that they are in. In the Fox Valley, we're fortunate. I got fired and had a gig basically offering me the exact same amount of money back 2.5 hours after the show wrapped up. That is not the case in a lot of places. I think it's important to reflect on that kind of stuff from my perspective, that we are blessed a lot of times where we are listening from. Alan says automation will lead to the inevitable collapse of capitalism. Good. Or they'll just exploit us further. I believe, like, real talk, now that I'm not beholden to FCC airwaves anymore, I can really just let my freak flag fly. I think that's why they're trying to put data centers and flock cameras everywhere, is because they're not intending to allow this economic system collapse. I think a lot of us are going to find ourselves out of a job permanently in the near future, and people are going to get angry. And rather than trying to concoct a system that's actually going to hold people to account, and by people, I mean the higher ups, and make sure that everybody is offered an opportunity to at least the basics of a human life, you're going to see frustration. You're going to see frustration across the board here, and that's why they're trying to monitor people here. So that's kind of my attitude towards it. But so our voting rights, our Calder Royce's comms director just reached out for an interview. If you're listening to me right now, I'll call you as soon as I get off the air. I don't have any faith that automation is going to be handled in the right way in America. And every other country actually develops social safety nets. I don't see us doing that, especially when 40% of our population is willing to cheer for a transgender athlete ban, and completely ignore all of these other facts. And I think the most frustrating part, and that's where I'm going to kind of pivot into a little bit of punching Dems here in a second, is that, as I said in my Facebook short that I posted before I got on the air today, when the Democrats try and do something objectively popular that has more than 60% of the population on board with them, they try to do it one time in a way they know will fail, or they will look for a fail, what I refer to, and I did not make this up, but the rotating villain, whether it's Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin, or the Supreme Court, or the parliamentarian, or Donald Trump, or unions sometimes, or whomever they may point at, they're always going to have a reason for why the popular thing can't happen. Can't forgive student loans. Can't do anything about the minimum wage. Can't do anything about the cost of living. Republicans show up and their agenda isn't even popular with 40% of the population. We want the mass virgin army taking people out in the streets. We want to see tax cuts for the billionaires. Trust us, bro, it's going to trickle down this time. We want all of these things that are unpopular, and when they get shot down or figure out that they don't have the votes in order to get something across the finish line, they'll try 15 different ways, bend the rules, do whatever they need to do to get the objectively unpopular thing to happen, only for Democrats to turn around and raise money on it. The Save America Act is not popular. The only people who think it is a voter ID act are the people that don't want to learn differently. Everybody else paying attention to politics knows exactly what the Save America Act is. And the idea that this is somehow in the name of election security, if you're listening to my show, you probably know the statistics better than I do. Basically 100 cases of undocumented immigrants voting, something like 134 cases of documented election frogs. I can't say the right word because I actually got my account banned one time, and really no examples of anything the Republican Party is talking about other than the examples that I talked about last week in Utah. And I'm not going to reiterate it, but let's just say $4.3 million to a firm in order to allow for people that have passed away to take part in a process to push forward unpopular legislation. Hopefully that was discreet enough to not get me dinged by the censors. That's not a conspiracy theory. That's something that actually happened. And I see your comment, Justin. I am building up to that. We kind of got distracted for the last 40 minutes. Hopefully there's still time. You know what's funny is I act like I have a hard out time at 11, like I'm still on the air. Realistically, I can just talk until I run out of shit to say. So I guess I could probably just do all the topics that I wanted to do. But while we're talking about the SAVE Act, I actually came across another one this morning, and I don't remember it. Hold on. TP USA, Toilet Paper USA, leader Austin Smith. This is according to GOP-Ls. forged hundreds of signatures for his petition to be, you know, I don't want to say the word because I don't know what's going to ding me for it right now. He has pleaded guilty to election frogs. MAGA, where are you at? I found one. Turns out you only care about it when your orange dad president ends up losing. Otherwise, it seems like it's all systems go. You starting to see how it works? They want to force this across, and I have the worst kind of feeling they're going to force it across. And then Democrats turn around, to Justin's point on my YouTube chat, and the Kids Act passed the House. Now, here's the deal. And even the people in the Substack for Minocqua probably read my article that I wrote about this. After the Democrats lost the 2024 election, I had the exact same message that I had for myself after I lost my job last week. This is not the time to get sad. This is the time to get mad, and it's the time to make things happen. And I wrote an article about how Democrats, for a year and a half, fear-mongered around Project 2025, not trying to imply that I think Project 2025 was good or shouldn't have been focused on, but rather than trying to scare me about what Donald Trump and Republicans do, what the Democratic Party should have been doing was putting together their own version of Project 2025. In the Substack that I wrote for Minocqua, I've talked about Project 2029 early January of 25. And I said, Democrats need to be telling people right now, Medicare for all. Here's how we're going to tax the rich. Here's what we're going to do about childcare. You know, all the stuff that Francesca Hong is running on for governor. And by the way, for the paid subscribers for Minocqua at 1 p.m., I am going to be doing an office hours on Kirk's Substack just for the paid subscribers. We're going to talk about Francesca Hong in the article that I wrote, and I hope a lot of you guys will take part in that conversation with me. But Democrats as a whole should be putting together Project 2029. And I'm happy to report that they are actually taking that advice to heart and are actually trying to do the things that I had been mentioning in that article. Here's why Democrats suck still. You know what the first tentpole of their Project 2029 is? Allie, be quiet. It's the Kids Act. It is to make sure that anybody under 16 no longer has access to social media. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not a parent, and I didn't have my first social media until I was 18, and it was MySpace. So, like, I have no experience being a teenager, really, and being into social media, nor do I have any experience being the parent to a child that is currently just entrenched in social media. I am not saying that it's a bad idea. I am saying that this is not a tentpole idea, and as Justin highlights, this is exactly what the UK is doing surrounding censorship for our allies in the Middle East. And anybody who's willing to condemn what they are doing to the people of Gaza and the people of Lebanon, people are excuse me, sorry, I'm getting texts as I'm talking to you here. People are getting arrested. People are getting fined for the exact same for this exact same problem. Excuse me one second. One of my listeners called me out in a way that I feel bad about. You got to send me the message before the show. Waka waka, ladies and gentlemen. Violet's asking for my waka waka mug. Bada bing, bada boom. There we go. But so the Kids Act, as Vote for Oregon points out, the Kids Act would fuel mass surveillance and data harvesting. Absolutely. But it's under the guise of protecting children. And the Democrats, at a time when we are seeing far left unification around taxing billionaires, rent freezes, healthcare for all, affordable childcare, funded public schools. The Democrats have decided to run right. And we talked about it a little bit yesterday. Chris Murphy, Jared Moskowitz, and Tom Suozzo all showing up on right-wing media telling you that the strategy going forward isn't to reach out to the left, it's to go to the right. I don't have any water in the Waka Waka thing, Violet, so unfortunately I'm going to have to do this. Mind your business. It's a matter of surveillance, and when taken in conjunction, and for those of you listening on the Minocqua Substack, I am not familiar with what your situation is surrounding flock cameras. Northeast Wisconsin, we have an issue, but community pushback is actually starting to get some of them taken down. Appleton, they're coming down. Oshkosh, they're coming down. We're working on it in Neenah. But when you look at the efforts to protect children mixed with flock cameras going up and data centers being built everywhere with very little community input, and more importantly, even less community support, the picture becomes much more clear. And I don't think it's a matter of conspiracy theories and tinfoil hats. I think it's a matter of something entirely differently, and I think we know what we're talking about. Those of you newer to the program, I refer to it as the plight of the progressive. We have the unfortunate burden of being right about shit 15 years too early. Then Blue MAGA Dems show up about 5 years later, and they're like, can you believe this is happening? And we're like, yes, we've been talking about this for 5 years. We actually specifically warned about this. Then 10 years after that, so 15 years later, MAGA's like, I can't believe this is happening. It's like, thank you. We're already on to something entirely different at this point. You slept on it because apparently catching Osama bin Laden was much more important than your securities and freedoms were at the time. And now we're doing the same thing here. Somebody shared a video with me in Neenah. A burglar was, or a murderer was caught. An unaliver was caught. Son of a gun. Am I about to get banned on TikTok? We'll find out. An unaliver was caught. And of course, it was a black guy, and somebody sent it to me. My friend Mikey, actually, on YouTube. And he says, he just sends me it on, like, with no other message or anything like that. Also anti-flock. And I said, you know what? Right wingers are going to run this up the flagpole, because the way flock happens is they tell old white people that flock cameras are going to be used to catch black criminals. And now Neenah has an example of that, and they're going to run that example up the flagpole to make a point. Atmos Farish, I don't know how to say that, says Fox 11 already did. I'm not surprised. Anna, where you been? I broke that news 15 minutes ago, but I appreciate you for being here nevertheless. I absolutely love it. And I actually got a text from a good friend of mine as well, who shall remain nameless for the moment, but I will be saying his name soon enough. And yeah, born and raised in Brooklyn, I did lose my gig, but don't you worry, good things are on the horizon. I bounce back better and harder every single time something like this happens. So I appreciate your concern, but don't you worry, I'll be good. Neenah PD and Milwaukee PD both responded. Go figure. Oh, it's green hair. Okay, right on. We absolutely need some good news. Susie says, I told your old radio station that if they ever replaced your time slot with any other with Glenn Beck or Joe Pags, that I will definitely find a new listen. Yeah, you should just do that already. You know what? You do what you want, Susie. I'll just mind my business. 1 in 5 USA kids lives in food insecurity. That's provided by Rusty on my YouTube page. Maybe that might be the better thing for Democrats to address rather than the Kids Act. If they're serious about winning elections, which the further into the Trump administration we get, I'm beginning to question. But if they're serious about winning elections, the left has made it pretty clear. Mark my words, if the progressive victories continue trending along the path that they are on, the Democrats are going to create a third party. And it's going to be helmed by Joe Manchin. Because when the Democrats screw over the progressives, they expect you to fall in line. And then now the people are finally waking up to the fact that progressives were right all along. They're like, you know what? Let's just go start a new party for all the level-headed people in the room to be able to go and share their. I need to turn my do not disturb on my phone when I do this show. Yeah, and Born Again, I'm still doing the show live on now Minocqua Brewing Substack, as well as my own YouTube, Facebook, and TikTok page. So throw me some subscriptions. I know you've been following along for months at this point. I appreciate your continued support, my friend. But when I see the way these things play out, it gets really hard to be inspired by the future. Not hard, however, in the state of Wisconsin because of who I think is ultimately going to come out on top of things here, which we're going to use as a pivot point here in a second. I am going to repost the link on my YouTube page right now. Excuse me as my computer freezes a little bit here. Jar Manny, do you have a source on that? Samuel Alito's retiring. Has anybody else heard that? Okay, maybe not. Now I see it was posted an error. Never mind. False alarm. I'm going to repost the StreamYard link for anybody that wants to join the show via the YouTube. And again, I apologize to the people on Substack. For some reason, it doesn't seem to work on my iPad. I should have a different setup for tomorrow, and your input will be included in the show as well. I am doing my best to try and keep everybody as included while also getting through my main points here too. But I say all that to say, the Democrats, if they're being serious, they're watching the Republicans pull out all the stops to make it harder to vote and make life more difficult for trans people and immigrants, do shitty things to Haitians, do all the stuff we talk about on this show regularly, and then the Democrats are going to show up with excuses rather than solutions. And I'm here to tell you right now, outside the box is not going to have any time for any of that. We have watched the MAGA movement remake America and the government in their image basically overnight with minimal pushback. And I will not accept that the objectively popular outcomes of 2026 can't happen for whatever reason. I recognize Donald Trump is going to veto any kind of positive progressive legislation, but the Democrats should have bills on Donald Trump's desk every day surrounding children in poverty, surrounding first-time home buyers, surrounding making education affordable for people that want to better themselves, surrounding healthcare access, any of these things. Make Donald Trump and the Republican Party vote against this stuff every single day. And instead, they would rather vote for the Kids Act, which is a Trojan horse to defend our allies in the Middle East, because enough of us are waking up to the fact that what they are doing in Lebanon and what they are doing in Gaza is absolutely disgusting. And so instead of actually taking that head on, look at the articles. Look at the way people talk about the rift in the parties. Now, don't get me wrong, it might be a little bit more true within the Republican Party because it's 66 to 33. Two-thirds of Republicans are still in favor of supporting our allies in the Middle East. And for those of you listening that are newer, I cannot say the country because it gets me censored on TikTok. They're in favor of supporting our allies in the Middle East, whereas a third of right-wingers are against the idea. Whereas in the Democratic Party, it's an entirely different story. 4/5 of people, 80%, actually, if we're being specific, probably closer to 3/4. It's 77% of people are in favor of completely cutting ties with our allies until they show a little bit of interest in trying to show a little bit of restraint for what they're doing to the people overseas. And yet mainstream media is trying to position it as like, well, it's 50-50 and there's no real way to know. And like, yes, there absolutely is a way to know, specifically within the Democratic Party. And rather than take that animal head on, they'd rather just make sure that the younger generations have no capacity to actually get informed on what's going on, so that when they're 22, they're more likely to vote Democratic. Don't get me wrong. I voted Democratic basically my entire life. It might have been one or two where I just wasn't feeling it. And obviously 2016, I wrote in because I was so pissed off about what they did to Bernie. However, when I was 22 years old, I graduated from college in 2010, and shortly thereafter, that was the first time that recent college grads were allowed to stay on their parents' health care until they were 26. Now, I did not have the foresight then to recognize that Obamacare was a taxpayer sieve, that it still left a lot to be desired, that Joe Lieberman, as well as Republicans and a handful of liberals, blocked a public option that would have allowed for cheaper operations. The list goes on and on. I didn't know any of that. What I knew was I had just graduated from college in a recession. My mom had just passed away, and I was allowed to stay on the family health care as a result of what Democrats had got across the finish line. And as a result of those things that happened, I was very pro-Democrat as a result. I'm like, why the fuck wouldn't Republicans want to do this? Like, do they know what life is like right now? Why aren't they in favor of this? And they made a believer for a very long time. I was not paying attention to the Middle East. I was not paying attention to the military industrial complex at all. I was not paying attention to any of the trends that were going on. I was not paying attention to hedge funds. I was not paying attention to private equity. I was not paying attention to any of that. All I knew was I didn't have health care, and then I did. I imagine the 22-year-olds of today per capita are much more informed, much more involved than they used to be. And I admire that. My old intern, Aaron the intern, was a 21-year-old who was having thoughts much more put together in my text line back when I did talk radio than most of the grown-ass men and women that were texting, because social media allows for people to be more well-versed. While people that only get their news from traditional sources were seeing a one-sided conversation about that, people in the who use social media, who use independent journalists, were seeing videos every day that were like, okay, wait a minute, I'm sorry, these people are our allies. And that opened a lot of eyes, including my own. And so instead of addressing the elephant in the room, instead of trying to win a debate and convince people that the status quo surrounding the Middle East is the most acceptable way forward, they'd just rather pass the Kids Act, which is going to require all of us to enter our IDs into the internet in order to use it, and ban 16-year-olds from having access to socials entirely, so that they can be fed an entirely different line of BS. Think about it, because some of you guys can only think in terms of partisan perspectives. In Texas, they're making it part of the curriculum now to read the Bible. So now, imagine a world where all of those kids have parents who are in favor of that decision. They now are no longer able to access the internet, and all of the teachers are required by law to have their students read the Bible and not teach to any other religions. And if you don't do that, you lost your job in the middle of an affordability crisis. Now take that idea and apply it to anything. And what I am describing to you right now is how the Kids Act will work if it gets across the finish line. And that is exactly the first thing the Democrats are making as a tentpole to Project 2029, is getting that across the finish line. I wish I believed that these people were serious about winning elections, and I just can't convince myself that I can do that. I have seen them rally the troops 100-fold relative to what took place in the aftermath of Donald Trump winning the election in 2024. The fact that 3 socialists won in New York has scared the shit out of the Democratic establishment much more than a masked Virgin Army taking the life of Americans in the middle of the street in broad daylight. Why? Because they know as long as that's the focal point, then you're still going to vote for the establishment Democrats. They are realizing that there is an entire flock of people out there, poor choice of words, screw flock. There's an entire group of people out there who believes that ICE is trash, that the detention centers need to go, that we are better than this version of ourselves, and also that the Democratic establishment is not taking the cost of living crisis serious enough at all, and that our association with our allies in the Middle East is making us pariahs all over the planet. Take it from me. I traveled to Thailand at the beginning of the year. I'm incredibly likable if you guys haven't met me in real life. I'm good at winning people over, but it doesn't change the fact that every person I met always showed a little bit of hesitancy the second I said that I was an American, because I don't carry myself as American. I'm not rah rah USA. I'm friendly. I go out of my way to make people, as Violet says, so humble. I'm the best at being humble. I go out of my way to make people feel comfortable all the time. I'm the quintessential people pleaser. You know who never showed any hesitancy when I announced that I was from America? People from our allies country. It's that simple. I've been skipping a lot of comments here. I apologize. I've been on a roll. I'm not going to be able to catch up. It's going to be boring if I try and catch up. A violated elf says, seriously, they keep pushing people to the point where they have nothing else to lose. It really does feel that way. And I'm not implying anything. Censors. All I'm saying is, I'm not sure Luigi did anything wrong. Okay, let's see who we have here. I appreciate the shout outs to the people in my comments here. Diane says she loves what the show's becoming. It's much better than what it was. That means a lot to me, actually. Herb says he's tuning into AM 620 for the Brewers games. I'm, of course, not going to recommend that, but I will say, if you're a fan of the Brewers and you're used to listening to it on a different station, AM 620 carries the Brewers games. But so that was my thoughts on that. I welcome any comments on the matter if you haven't already taken part in the show, whether it be today, unfortunately, just through YouTube and TikTok. I'm not complaining. But I have a lot of people reaching out to me with business opportunities or just socialization opportunities, trying to get to know me a little bit better, trying to find ways to market the show or advertise with the show or carry the show. And so as a result, I find myself out and about and on the phone for hours after my show wraps up. And then I don't do any of the tech stuff. So I am trying to get it work. I haven't even checked my Facebook page once yet. I'm sure there's plenty of people leaving comments there as well that I've been completely whiffing on, and I do apologize. You are valued, and I do care about what you say. I just am still in the middle of the Bush League setup. Thank you, D and Ann. Roundup, your local store no longer contains glyphosate. Good stuff. And Trump is going to use the rulings that went against him to lobby for the SAVE Act, and people will fall for it. She's probably right. Unfortunately. Yeah, Jen says they're going to pin me down and make sure that I have all my stuff set up. And now we got to add Minocqua's Substack to the list as well. It just keeps going. But thankful for the opportunity, nevertheless. So I just posted the link on my YouTube page if anybody has any remaining thoughts there. And obviously, I'm treating this show just like the old radio show. So I'm going to move on, but if you have thoughts about what I'm talking about, keep firing them in there. And please understand, I'm sure you guys can see the way these chats are operating. You guys are rapid firing, and I love that you're all talking amongst yourself, regardless of which platform you're on. I'm never ignoring you guys. I have to maintain some semblance of a train of thought. Otherwise, we're never going to get anywhere with this show. So I'm trying to figure out the best way to do things. Still a work in progress. What is this, show 6? It's the 6th time we're doing this. So we are still working through some things here, and we'll get there. And Jim, I appreciate you listening, and never feel obligated to comment, but I do appreciate you being here. Get a whiteboard. We'll get there. I think that's a good idea. Wait, what is Rusty looking for, Isabel? Let's see here. I don't see a Twitch link. The Minocqua Twitch link. There is no Ben Cominos Twitch channel yet. There is a Minocqua Twitch channel, and it is available in my link tree as well. So That link is available in my YouTube bio as well as my Facebook bio. It's basically the link right in the description. Ali, you're saying you can't find it either. Okay. We're going to look into what went wrong there. Still learning. I see you, Ali. Thank you. And we'll try and get to the bottom of what went wrong on that front. Again, it's a work in progress here, but we are going to get there. Thank you for all of the process. Everybody's typing Ben in all caps. I feel like I've been ignoring you. I'm not doing it personally. Yes, Violet, I see you there. You're doing great. But so in any event, I do want to wrap up the show here, or at least come close to wrapping up the show. I've got two more topics, and I might just do them both. If you didn't catch yesterday's show, which, by the way, new listeners, all of my old shows are archived on the YouTube page. I talked a little bit about a citizen vigilante movie that's basically just every bigot's wet dream personified. And I mentioned Luigi a moment ago. You're seeing a lot of people online champion what it is, what that show's about. It's basically about a white guy who gets fed up with the immigrant population in his neighborhood and takes matters into his own hands. And you see people being like, oh, look at all these woke liberals getting mad because a guy's finally doing something to defend his culture. And I'm sitting there like, aren't you the exact same people that like do not stop complaining about what Luigi did, and yet you're here championing the idea of a guy going around unaliving immigrants? I'll just never understand these people and how they think. Oh yeah, the movie reviews are coming, Alex. Don't you worry. Hello, Violet. But what I actually want to talk about here is the interview yesterday. Francesca Hong went on Hassan Piker. Very big deal. I interviewed Francesca about a month ago, probably a more viewed interview if I had to guess, but I can't confirm that. I didn't see the metrics on it, but I have to believe it got more views on Outside the Box. We'll just assume that's the case. It says to me that this race is about to get a thrust into the limelight. For those of you that didn't get a chance to watch it, it was a very friendly interview. Hassan is a self-described democratic socialist, whereas I define myself as more so leftist with socialist leanings. But I am not necessarily saying we have to eliminate capitalism entirely. I am just saying capitalism is a bit better if it has a waistband. And I think that boomers benefited from a waistband in capitalism, whereas we have been left for the actual rugged individualism that boomers oftentimes pound their chest and talk about and claim that they have been born from, whereas we are looking for handouts. That's my traditional attitude. Hassan, a little further to the left, obviously Hong as well, self-described DSA, and I'm here for it. As I mentioned, I'm going to get all the candidates for governor on here, and they're all going to get fair interviews. But barring some kind of massive shift in policy or the way that people are talking about certain issues in this race, I don't see my opinion changing on the matter, but there are plenty of minds, if you check the Marquette polling, that have not been made up yet. So with all of that in mind, I watched her go on Hassan Piker's show, and I am already watching the right-wing media, specifically local, and by local, I mean statewide in Wisconsin, online, through the radio, through TV, all of them trying to paint this in a different way. And so I have a feeling some of you guys may not know who Hassan is, and allow me to paint a picture for you here. I said in a tongue-in-cheek way moments ago that I'm not sure Luigi did anything wrong. The reason I say that is because obviously taking another person's life is wrong. But the way our healthcare system operates is also wrong. And if you listen to people talk about it, it is actually much more responsible for many more deaths around this nation than Luigi could have ever hoped to be responsible for. And yet, when they do it, it is perceived as just business, whereas what Luigi did gets national recognition and a nationwide debate about the morality of what ended up happening that day. Allegedly. Nothing has been proven yet. People that go on Hassan Piker's show get painted in a certain way because the claim is, according to right-wingers, that he celebrated the events of 9/11. Now, I am here to tell you right now that that is a misrepresentation of Hassan's beliefs, and allow me to speak for him. I hope I can be on his show someday, but far be it for me to speak for him. But I also get it because I understand what he is saying, because I'm about to kind of echo the sentiment here. He is not saying that he is happy that what happened at the World Trade Centers happened. He is saying that he understands it. Much like I am not saying that I am happy that Brian Thompson lost his life. I am saying that I understand it. For 15 years in the lead up to 9/11, there was constant bombings in the Middle East. Muslims were losing their lives left, right, and center at the hands of the American military-industrial complex, NATO, and of course, our allies in the Middle East. And no one gave a shit. Nobody cared. Nobody was wondering about the morality of it. They were terrorism, getting terrorism. That was the end. That was all they needed to know. And I get it. It was a more naive time. The internet barely even existed. I'm not knocking anybody for thinking that way in 1995. You know what I mean? This isn't a matter of being reprimanded for not knowing what you didn't know. Okay? But so when Hassan says America should have expected 9/11, I get it. Because there were warnings. We were ticking off the entire world. Hell, bin Laden wrote a letter where he said 1.5 million of my Muslim brothers and sisters have lost their lives at the hands of the Western allies. And we take the lives of 3,000 people in the entire world unifies in anger against what we did. And while I can say what happened to the people in New York on that day was disgusting and heartbreaking and changed the trajectory of life forever for everybody, I think it's naive and pompous to not expect something like that to happen. That's the Ben Cominos take, but that is essentially what Hassan is saying. And so when people interview on that show, they are immediately labeled as sympathizers for Al-Qaeda or any of these groups that I don't know which groups I'm allowed to say and which I'm not, because TikTok is incredibly censorious. And I see people talking about reading the letter. I read the letter shortly after, that fateful day in October of 23. And shortly thereafter, after enough people read it, they made it so much more difficult to find. It was readily available on The Guardian. Go try and find it right now. Actually, not right now. Keep listening to this show. But after I wrap up, go try and find the letter from bin Laden and tell me how easy it is to find on the other side of that. Because something tells me you're going to struggle to end up finding it, because people were reading it for their first time in the aftermath of October, 2023. And they were like, wow. And here I was thinking it was about our freedoms the whole time. Turns out they actually had a very thoroughly thought out list of reasons why that day happened in 2001, and we probably shouldn't have been as shocked as we were. But I was 13, so what the hell did I know? So, I say all that to say, Francesca Hong going on Hassan Piker's show, I feel like I might be preaching to the choir a bit more, and that's probably the most sad I am about losing outside the box talk radio form, is that I know there's still people in these chats and watching, maybe not necessarily speaking on it, but watching and not agreeing with everything I say. Talk radio, I'd say it was 50-50. Internet's probably going to be a little bit more of an echo chamber, and there's a good chance that a lot of you listening, I'm not breaking any news to you. But I'm hopeful that some of you who maybe have never watched Hassan's show, who hear him identified as a sympathizer for what took place in October of 23 or in September of 2001, that is an intentional misrepresentation by the Uniparty, because Hassan's politics, much like my politics, are becoming much more popular every single day. As the systems in place do not allow for us to be able to build a life, to sustain a life, to feel comfortable. Having never lost a job before last Monday, it's crazy the sensation you feel about affordability and knowing exactly how on the ropes you are almost immediately. Getting the notice that starting tomorrow, I don't have health care anymore, and we're the only industrialized nation where that happens. And that people willing to speak to that are oftentimes classified as anti-American for highlighting exactly how wrong so many of the things are that we're dealing with. Canary says, sometimes I leave this show more confused as I always get more info that I have to evaluate. I just learned that now. What are you saying you just learned? Oh wow, someone's listening who was in New York on the day and they'll never forget. I assure you none of us will, you know? And I'm not, again, I think we can all tell. Oh, I see what you're saying. Um, I hope that I have enough trust built in the people who are across all of these different streams right now that you guys know that I am not sympathizing with the people who did that day in September and that day in October. I am saying I get it. And more importantly, if I were doing this show in those countries, we would be talking about those days the way we talk about the Boston Tea Party, the way we talk about the shot heard round the world, the way we talk about D-Day. That is how they probably talk about it. And it's hard to perceive it that way because the systems in place want you to look at life through a system of good guys and bad guys, and not a system of gray areas where we have spread 400 military bases around the world, taken people's wealth from all over the planet, and then we get frustrated when people are mad at us about it. And I don't know if that kind of show is going to be built for the internet either. We're going to find out as I see people start saying, I love the TikTok shop. Boy, the TikTok shop is great, because that's the way you have to get around the censors on TikTok, is you have to occasionally just start pumping up the crap that they sell there when you start talking about the no-no words that Big Brother doesn't want you to hear. YouTube, Facebook, and Substack are a bit more chill about it for now. But based on the way we're seeing an authoritarian crackdown, and by the way, it ain't just MAGA, I have a feeling we're probably headed towards something much more egregious as time goes on. Hal's asking if I'm still part of Political Voices Network. I've been trying to get a call with the guy that runs it. I'll have more updates on that a little bit. I don't know. We're going to have to see if we can work out a deal here. But I wanted to make sure I didn't want to give them video content that was just, me and my blinds. We're putting it together here. Now I have my Batman blanket. I have this lovely little memento here that I like to get across to people. Starting to put a little semblance of some things together. I have a much more thoroughly thought out plan for a studio. It's taking some time to put together here, but this will be a professional operation by the end of summer at the very least. But we're going to have a mic and a boom stand. You're just going to see it slowly happen. And for those of you who stick around for the entire process, you're going to watch it slowly get built. Yeah, Rusty says Bill Maher says he hasn't changed, but America has. LOL. Exactly. Like, so many level-headed centrists say that about things, because here's the reality that a lot of people don't want to acknowledge. Bill Maher is a millionaire. He doesn't want to pay more in taxes. So of course he's going to be like, let's go with the liberals who don't want to raise taxes but'll say nice things about gay people. Jen, I'm saying end of summer only because you're privy to information not everyone in all the chats are privy to. But you know, I technically I'll have a nice home studio before then. Get off my case. But no, this was actually a gift. Hold on, actually, stand back and stand by. I think those words aren't charged. And I apologize. I believe her name is Lynn. I don't know if she followed me. To the internets or not. But so after what happened to Renee Good as a result of ICE, I went off on my social media and got reprimanded at work. And a lot of you ended up finding me that day. And you were like, I didn't know who you were. And then I saw your 2-minute passionate video about what ICE did to Renee Good, and I just had to listen. And Lynn was one of them. And she knitted me this red hat because in February, and I forget the name, it was like Reichstag or something like that. It was a German or a Norwegian thing that was a pushback against fascism. And everybody on, I want to say February 26th, put on a red hat. Right on. Shawnee says that's how he found me. I love that. So everyone back in 1941 put on red hats to push back against authoritarianism and fascism, and they redid it in 2026. In memory of the people that did it then, pushing back against ICE and what the MAGA movement was doing. And so she knitted me this red hat, and she also knitted me this, because one of the reasons why I took so much shit in at work wasn't necessarily that I'm against federal agents unaliving Americans in the middle of the street while wearing a mask and not facing any kind of repercussions or even a basic investigation, but it was the fact that I was aggressively saying over and over again, fuck ICE. And if you're in favor of what ICE is doing, fuck you. And apparently that's not kosher at a radio station. I didn't know that. I'm still learning. And so, obviously, a lot of people hated that I did that message because they're pro-bigotry, and a lot of people loved that message, and Lynn was one of them. And so I got this, and I figured this would be a great addition. I wasn't even allowed, when I was employed, I wasn't even allowed to take a picture of this and post it on my Facebook and thank Lynn for what she did and let people know that I can't be censored. I was told that I could not post this on my own personal page. Now that I am my own guy, bop. So, I mean, that's the way that I'm going to do things here going forward. Shawnee says it's not kosher to stand against an untrained military force running the streets. I mean, hey, you let other people make their bed and lie in it. You know what I said to them when they told me that? I said, in 20 years, when you look back on this, you're going to be thankful that you had somebody like me on your airwaves talking the way I was when ICE was doing the things that they did. 6 months later, I got fired. So what are you going to do? But so, huge tangent there. I bring all of that up to say, yeah, Nataki says it's good to not have those corporate restraints. I'm right there with you. Nice to have that corporate money, but I'll tell you what, the freedom really does. Assuming this stuff with Minocqua and the handful of other opportunities that I'm slowly building out here end up doing what I think they're going to do, we're going to be unfucking stoppable, which I'm very excited about. But so in any event, I say all that to say, Francesca Hong went on Hassan Piker's show yesterday. And it's not going to be portrayed in the appropriate light, and I wanted to get ahead of that. As far as the actual interview itself, it was cute. You know what I mean? It was fun. they did like rapid fire stuff like, oh, are you in favor of universal childcare, healthcare, thoughts on data centers, all this kind of stuff, going back and forth about the history of socialism in Milwaukee and in Wisconsin at large, the birth of Social Security and unemployment insurance and so many other things coming from Wisconsin. Really good history for people. It's funny because you do this for a living. And like for instance, I just mentioned the Osama thing, right? And 3 or 4 of you just said that was the first time I've ever heard that. I've known it for so long at this point that I just assume that every single person knows it. And that's probably one of my biggest weaknesses as a commentator is I kind of gloss over the details sometimes because I'm like, well, obviously you guys all know the background, so I'm just going to jump into the meat and potatoes of the story. And in reality, a lot of people don't know the background or don't know all of the background at the very least. So I I tend to gloss over those things a lot, and I think it's a good history lesson for the people listening who aren't in Wisconsin, because much like what took place with Graham Plattner and um fill in the blank here. Why am I blanking? Zoran Mamdani, the 3 people in New York who won. Ramen out in LA, she goes into a primary. Wisconsin is going to be thrust into the national spotlight. Now, that is not something that we are unfamiliar with, as every single presidential election feels like it comes down. Oh, Abdul El Said, thank you. It's not something Wisconsin's not used to, as we're always thrust into the national spotlight because the Electoral College is dependent oftentimes on Wisconsin votes, and the way we vote will more often than not, when Democrats don't pick our candidate for us, will determine who is ultimately going to come out as the president. However, in terms of a governor's race, I have a feeling we're not going to be used to this. And you are going to see both liberals and conservatives, assuming Hong comes out. Anybody else comes out, it's going to be a traditional race. The mainstream, the national syndicates won't give a shit about what's going on in Wisconsin for the purposes of governor. Still will care for the Electoral College and all that, but won't care from a governor's perspective, or at the very least will have the complete and thorough backing of the DNC. And they'll be telling you about how Tiny Tom Tiffany doesn't believe that the 2020 election was on the up and up. And, and that'll be the way that it's spun. If Hong comes out of it, now it's going to be about anti-Semitism. Now it's going to be about socialism. Now it's going to be about whether or not that's indicative. And here's the deal. I'm here to tell you right now, as I wrote about in my Minocqua article, purple state does not mean centrist. Purple state means you got a bunch of progressives running around and you got a bunch of pro-ICE people running around, and it's close to a 50-50 split. I'm not saying those are the only 2 types that exist. I'm saying that those are the 2 camps that people are funneled into. The people that want to see economic change and the people that just really hate Mexicans, apparently, because I can't figure out anything else better about this administration outside of the way immigrants and transgender people are treated. If you get far enough away from a Mac camera, it turns a light on around the screen. That's kind of wild. Yeah, Graham Plattner Fan Club, who's a regular listener on TikTok, says they're going to spin Hong as a Yahtzee. And I'm kind of anticipating that as well. Hell, the number of people that have called me anti-Semitic since October of 2023 is remarkable. I actually sat the first day at my desk, the first day after that day in October, the amount of hate that I got, I sat at my desk and I think I just quietly cried for 30 minutes because my desk was tucked away in a corner and no one could see me. And I just sat there reading messages of people saying the meanest stuff to me in my day. It was October 9th, 2023 was the first show that I did. And I was really sad that day, and I hate to say it, I kind of can relate to MAGA in that sense because I got called so many names so often, knowing that I wasn't, that now when I hear people throw the anti-Semitism word around, just rolls off my back at this point, because I know who I am, what I believe, and what I hope for, and the idea that something different is meant by what I'm doing. I know what I mean, and anybody who doesn't, I don't give a shit. So, like, it takes a while for that to roll off your back, and I have a feeling that that conversation is going to be very prevalent in Wisconsin for people that are not used to having that conversation. If Hong comes out of the primary, not set in stone, by the way. I feel like everyone's acting like that's a done deal. It absolutely isn't. Old Lib says, if all the residents in Wisconsin were forced to move to Milwaukee so the rest of the state could be given a religious sect, how long would we take living in poverty? Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That's a great analogy, Old Lib. Exactly. We wouldn't. And we would champion the people that would push back against it. We would say those people have balls, regardless of what they did. It's ridiculous that governors' races and mayors' races are boiling down to that, but I mean, it is. And I'm glad people are waking up to the fact, and we should push back against bigotry. I haven't changed the channel. It's been MSNBC the whole time I've been talking to you guys, and the only two headlines that have been up the entire. Think about all the shit we've talked about today. Just me with no producer. I don't even have notes right now. I internalize my notes. I still put 3 hours every morning into internalizing what I want to talk to you guys about, and having some stats and facts ready to go, and occasionally having to glance at them to pull up quotes and whatnot. Think about how much stuff we're talking about. They have oscillated back and forth between the birthright citizenship Supreme Court ruling and the transgender athlete ruling. As Aaron the intern says, we get it. Ben's the best. I was just thinking it, but I'm glad you said it. Justin says, reminds him of The Handmaid's Tale. Just finished the book a few days ago. Yeah, I mean, it reminds you of a lot of things. But, like, they have not stopped talking about it for 2 hours. That's the kind of news they want you to get into. It's going to be a long process till November here, ladies and gentlemen. And my friend Jen went through it in Maine, and I can only imagine what's coming our way. As Jen says that CNN's the same. Just out of curiosity, is my controller dead? No, okay, just about. But just out of curiosity, let's see what our boys on Fox are doing real quick. Some woman named Degette, Degette, Dem incumbent faces far left challenge in Colorado. See, I'm just no. So, Violet, my family has YouTube TV, like, as a group thing. So my dad has YouTube TV, and I just use it. So that I can check strictly for criticism standpoint. But I just, like, kind of scour news stations to see what they're talking about, so I can say, see, here's why these people suck. And but no, definitely not cable. I'm in my 30s. Come on now. But isn't it funny that Fox News is now platforming liberal after liberal because they're nervous that leftists will win, because Republicans are more nervous. Please understand. Please understand. Republicans are more nervous about running against DSA candidates than they are running against liberals. Please understand that. That is not my opinion. That is the reality. They know that as long as a liberal shows up and says, we're going to do something about identity politics, and we're going to make sure our elections are secure, and we're going to make it so you have to use your ID to vote and use your ID to use the internet. Republicans want to run against those versions of liberals because they know about 35% of the population is going to vote for the conservative. 35% of the population is going to vote for the lib, and then it's going to be a matter of who has more disaffected voters. Are more people going to be mad at Donald Trump for having just the worst economy you can possibly imagine? Or are more people going to be mad that it seems as though the Democrats are much more excited to punch left than they ever were to actually try and move left? Turns out vote blue no matter who only works in one direction, unfortunately. But please take note, and I apologize. I watch Fox News, so you guys don't have to. So if you can't stomach it, don't you worry. I'll just let you know. But please take note of exactly how many liberals are finding themselves on Fox News the last couple of days that are never there because they want to highlight. Like I told you guys, Jared Moskowitz of Florida, Democrat, was on Fox Business, the Sunday morning shows, heavily viewed, saying, I'm actually to the right of J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio in regards to what we're doing in Iran. They don't want to go left. They're not big tent parties. They are as far left as they intend to go, and they are not taking a single step further beyond that unless we absolutely force them to. And if they don't want to, then it's time we start looking at alternatives of how we're going to move forward. That has always been the stance of outside the box, and it always will be. I am here for harm reductionist. And if, let's say for sake of argument, Sarah Rodriguez or Kelda Royce or Mandela Barnes, pick your poison, David Crowley, any one of these people comes out of the Democratic primary for governor on the up and up, they got my vote. Doesn't matter. Any single one of them got my vote. If we see some 2020 messing around, some like everybody drops out around the same time period and throws their endorsement behind the centrist because the progressive is obviously generating a lot of momentum, now we got a problem. Because test your ideas and see what happens. Because much to some people's chagrin, progressivism is popular right now. Because if you are listening to me and you are under 40, you really don't know an economy that's your friend. I had the rug ripped out from under me basically with no heads up whatsoever. First time it ever happened to me, and I'm 38 years old. Second, if you count losing a parent, but I kind of saw that one coming at least. I didn't do anything wrong. Actually, I excelled. And life right now is very tenuous. I'll be fine, but I'm built that way. A lot of people don't have that luxury. Not to mention, I check all the identity politics that makes my life more straightforward. It makes my life easier. I am straight. I am white. I am a dude. There are people willing to hire me. And what's funny is you go and talk to right wingers and they tell you liberals won't let you have a media job because they only want to hire minorities. And then I went and got a job and then I got fired because I was hurting MAGA's fifis. Ironic how that plays out, isn't it? They want to blame the fact that, oh, it's because of the libs. Nope, you went the wrong way. Aaron says that's actually a good point. What it's like living in a good functioning country and economy. Exactly. Exactly. Birdie, I don't get your point. You have a job. That's great. Congratulations. What did I say that was contrary to that? I don't know sometimes with you people. Susan says, wrote executives at Fox News have explicitly stated that the network sees a noticeable spike in ratings whenever prominent Democrats appear on their programs. Prominent, yes. They like the Pete Buttigieg dunking on conservative stuff, right? This isn't that. This is them bringing Democrats on to talk about patriotism, not talk about wokeism. Because Republicans are in their heyday when they're talking about identity, when they're talking about affirmative action, when they're talking about trans athletes. Republicans are on their back foot when they're talking about the failings of trickle-down economics, when they're talking about the failings of the Donald Trump administration, when they're talking about illegal wars that were started in Iran, when they're talking about a certain set of files in which Donald Trump's name shows up over 38,000 times just in the unredacted version of things. They don't want to have those conversations on Fox News and they don't care about the ratings. Just like how CNN is more than happy to have the ratings surrounding Donald Trump, they do not want the ratings surrounding progressivism. Rusty highlights 10% of NYC MAGA voters voted for Zohran Mamdani. Tell me how wrong I am. Now imagine Zohran Mamdani's platform becoming out of a white guy instead of a Muslim, and tell me how many MAGA Americans are going to vote for him, because I think we all know the answer. For the record, that's not my opinion. I say things very bluntly if you're new to this show. That's not my opinion. I'm saying from the perspective of a MAGA voter, picture Zohran Mamdani's platform coming out of a white person's mouth, and tell me how many MAGAs are going to end up voting for him. I'll tell you what I'm here for is Bibi said he's going to show up to New York, and Zohran said he's going to have him arrested. And Bibi says, I don't think he has the authority to do that. I am so here for that. I am so here for that. They should live stream that. But we'll see. I say all that to say Francesca Hong's going to be painted in a certain light here because of the show that she did. And I'm here to tell you right now that that's a bunch of BS, and you need to be willing to call that out. I think we're going to have to put a pin in it there, though, guys. It's at 10:59. Talking for 2 hours straight, plus a couple of guests, which I absolutely welcome. Should have a couple of, or I should say callers. Should have a couple of guests lined up for tomorrow or this week's show. I'll probably be able to get Kelda on in the near future, and a handful of others. Thank you very much for the compliments on the show today, guys. We're keeping it moving. We're not missing a step. As I've been stating, we are absolutely not going to be missing a step. Violet says, wash my Waka Waka cup. I am. And for those of you that don't know, Waka Waka is what my friends used to say that I was growing up with. It's obviously also a paraphrase of the famous Fozzie Bear saying that we used to mock. We used to be like, Ben, are you seriously going to do X, Y, and Z? And I'm like, Waka Waka. And then I kind of turned it into my catchphrase on the radio. But just so you know, eventually one day it's going to stand for Working American Class Association, with class spelled with a K. That's the party that we're going to get off the ground here for the people, the like-minded people that enjoy this show and think that there is a future of politics based on equality from an economic standpoint and equity from an identity standpoint. It's what this show's all about, and it's what we're going to get across the finish line. To the people on the Minocqua Substack, welcome to the party. We're doing this 9 to 11, 5 days a week, and I'm very excited you're all going to be taking part in this with me as well. Anybody listening to me through any of my other socials that isn't Minocqua, consider subscribing to my shit, obviously, but also to Kirk's Minocqua pod or Substack as well. The support obviously helps him quite a bit here as we're kind of trying to see where this kind of partnership takes us in the future. I appreciate the follows throughout the program today, and I look forward to getting to know some of the newer listeners better as you get to know me, as well as keeping all of you guys involved as well. Thank you for the comments, the guests, and all of the well wishes that you guys continue to send me. And like 8 of you threw me money on Venmo yesterday, and I gotta say, one of these days I'll go a day without getting emotional, but yesterday was not that day. The fact that so many of you guys believe in me enough to just throw me a couple bucks to support what it is that I'm trying to build. When you see me with red and blue lights behind me and it's a fancier setup, please know that that's what you guys are helping to build right now. And of course, keep the hot and readies in my belly as I continue moving along here in my unemployed life that I'm very excited to see where it goes. So all those links, minus apparently the Minocqua Twitch, are in my link tree. That link tree is in my bio on Facebook and on YouTube. Just search my name and then just go follow all the accounts that are on there. The Venmo is also in my link tree, C7557. So if you're in a position to donate, I welcome that and I appreciate you very much. It's all available. Thank you very much, guys. And Ben After Dark, almost forgot. Ben After Dark, 7 to 8 p.m. Much more chill show, much more user interactive. I don't think I have anybody planned to join with me. But if you'd like to come on and talk about literally anything, we typically decompress after the morning show, talk about movies, sports, a little bit of politics, a little bit of life, all that stuff. Everybody have a great day. Talk to some of you later tonight. Talk to the rest of you tomorrow. Have a wonderful time. TikTok people,